Thank you very much. A special thanks to Senator Ellis and Representative Johnson for hosting us here today. And I hope there's some food left over at the end, for which we can also thank you. I'm going to talk briefly, if I can push the right button.
So I have to push the right
button.
Yeah, the right button is the right button.
About our work in energy and the environment, and I'm going to focus my remarks on energy with the side comment that we are also working on what some would call environmental related research, and that mostly relates to how ecosystem services support a healthy economy. So it's very closely tied to economics. I'm not going to say more about that right now, but if you're interested, please ask. I'd be happy to speak more about that. Energy, of course, is a very hot topic these days, and it seems that its importance ebbs and flows more or less with the price of oil and with the price that all Alaskans have to pay to heat their homes, keep the lights on, and have mobility, both personally and for their businesses. And it's also a hot topic these days, I think, because we are really looking at a host of significant new opportunities to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and on diesel in particular. And so it's an exciting time to be looking at new technologies and how they might contribute to easing the burden of very high fuel prices and energy bills on Alaskans. And that's where our work is focused right now. In a nutshell, when we look at rural Alaska, this is a picture of Hooper Bay, and the question is, how can you integrate the emerging technologies epitomized by this wind turbine into the existing energy system and the way that people actually live in rural Alaska? And I like this picture because it shows that the energy challenge reminds us that the energy challenge in rural Alaska is not just about electricity, where the state of Alaska has historically put most of its efforts, but it's also very much about heating and having comfortable buildings, and about supplying energy for transportation, which is vital to life in general and subsistence in particular. So our current energy research goals that we're most focused on right now involve working with partners. And first and foremost, we're working with communities to try to better understand how energy affects their economy and how it affects the viability and well-being of communities. We're also working with what I call technical experts, engineers in particular, to evaluate some of these promising but sometimes untested new technologies and see which ones not only are going to work technologically for Alaska's very harsh conditions, but which ones are going to make economic sense so that we actually do reduce the burden that people are currently feeling from diesel. And then the last broad goal that we have as a policy-oriented research institute is, when appropriate, propose policy innovations that can encourage this move, perhaps not a complete move, but a shift away from expensive diesel and towards technologies that actually work. And I would pause to commend the legislators and the legislature's actions over the past several years, because they have really taken a leadership role in trying to accelerate this transition through several bills and programs which many of you are well aware of. And these have had in my view, a tremendous stimulating effect on our efforts to move away from diesel and adopt more sustainable long-term technologies. So here are some of the questions that I've already alluded to, and they relate to each bullet actually relates to a specific research project. And I'm not going to run down the list again, but I would like to just highlight the last bullet, which maybe you can't all read, and it says, what is the structure of end-use energy demand? And the reason that that's a good question to be asking right now is that we need to know about the structure of the demand if we're going to effectively integrate alternative technologies into the picture. And I'm just delighted to be working on this area right now because 26 years ago I worked on it a little bit, and then nobody seemed to care about it for a quarter of a century. And now we care again, and so it's exciting to be working on that question again, and I think it's really going to lead to some useful possibilities, especially for rural Alaska. Here's an example of what we're doing. It's our biggest energy project right now. It's a highly collaborative effort funded by the United States Department of Energy, special EPSCoR program it's called. It's a $3 million project. And it was spearheaded by our colleagues and friends at the Alaska Center for Energy and Power. Many of you may have seen Gwen Holdman, its director, probably in this very room. She's been a dynamic leader of collaborative research. And the challenge with this project is to figure out how the socioeconomic and management side of the equation can be improved, if you will, so that wind systems that are installed in rural communities have more than a fighting chance of succeeding, operating for a long time, and being truly sustainable. Many of you, I shouldn't say many, some of you may have been around when I was in the early 80s when we put wind systems into Alaska, I would argue prematurely. They looked like they would work, but the complete picture was not properly addressed, and a lot of them failed for lack of this management and institutional support, if you will. So we're very excited about this project and to be working with our technical colleagues at ASEP, with the engineering departments at both major campuses, and I shouldn't say that without acknowledging that UAS is a major campus, but we are not working with them, UAA, UAF. And we hope to learn some useful things that will really help us put wind into Alaska in a sustainable way. Another area that's at least intellectually exciting, and now it's even more exciting, I suppose, is we've been looking, again with our colleagues at ASEP, at the potential for very small nuclear reactors as a source of electric power, particularly for remote Alaska locations. And these technologies are substantially different from current technologies, and they would be able to supply power presumably more safely than current technologies, but also at the smaller scales that you really have to be able to apply to make them work in Alaska. A remote mine might be an example of a very good place to put a 50 megawatt next generation nuclear reactor. So again, we've been looking at what makes sense economically and working with colleagues at UAF and with the Department of Energy to assess what makes sense technologically. This is a graph of one of the results that we got out of our study, which shows that you need pretty high oil prices to make next generation nuclear power work economically, but they're not outside the realm of possibility. So it's hard to read this, but at oil prices of approximately $100 to $200 a barrel, which is where we are right now, in about 10 years, it is conceivable that some of these new designs could be both technically ready and economically viable, especially for places like Fairbanks, which under the assumption that they would still be relying heavily on oil as a source of heat. The last major project that I just want to highlight today is our either about to be published or just published update of a volume called Alaska Energy Statistics. This is a replacement, if you will, or a relaunching of a publication that the Power Authority used to produce called Alaska Electric Power Statistics. And this publication was a real statistical foundation for lots of analyses for as long as I have been in Alaska, up until the year 2000, when it was unfortunately discontinued. So we're very pleased to be working with AEA to resurrect this publication and to broaden it beyond electric power to try to give an increasingly unified picture of what's going on with energy, basically energy consumption in Alaska, in a way that can be useful for policy and for understanding. And we hope that this publication will continue and that we will be able to turn it back over to AEA, because it's not really a function of ISER to just be publishing statistics, but we have tried to generate the framework that will enable them to do it in a meaningful way. Here's a little graphic of some of our key partners and funders. And again, I would just like to commend the legislature for its initiative in putting forth new programs like the Home Energy Rebate Program, the Emerging Energy Technology Grant Fund, and both of these programs and others have led to a real surge in activity and a real surge in collaboration for us, especially with AEA and Alaska Housing Finance, the two primary energy agencies for the state. We have a great working relationship with them. We're working on a lot of things, and I will end by doing a little bit of crystal ball gazing, or just one little piece of crystal ball gazing into the future. And it actually relates back to this publication, where we attempt to go beyond electricity. My little bit of crystal ball prognostication is that as we move forward, the way the technologies are going, we are going to need to be thinking and acting to integrate the energy sectors that have been separate in the past, especially in rural Alaska. And by this I mean that electricity, space heating, and transportation are all going to start to merge into one energy system. And why is that? Well, it's because electricity technologies like wind turbines need to have a storage medium for their output. Space heating provides a medium, so do plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And I foresee the day when we will have plug-in electric hybrid four-wheelers. We will have wind power generating hydrogen. And all these elements will become interlinked, especially in Village, Alaska. And we may well be a world leader for the potential to export these technologies. And that is because rural Alaska offers the most attractive test bed economically, because the technologies are competing with some of the highest cost conventional energy in the world. And so they're going to be most attractive in rural Alaska first. So that's a very exciting opportunity for us to actually lead the world, even as we solve our own pressing challenges here. That's all I have to say about energy for now. So I will turn the microphone and the floor over to Diane Hirschberg.